Hello, my name is Harvey. Welcome to my shop. Today, in this video, we're going to be covering the last steps and processes for final prep before we start assembling the cabinets. We'll be putting the grooves for the back panels in the side pieces, and we'll be cutting the backs to their final dimensions. And before the end of the show today, we'll be starting to assemble some of those cabinets. So stay put and we'll be right back. Today's scripture will be John 16 and 17. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Verse 17. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn it, but that the world through him might be saved. One of the things I like to do is I like to, take and lay everything out, because you have these drawings in your mind, and you put them on paper and everything looks fine and dandy. But sometimes things change when you go to lay them out. So this is a side of a cabinet, and I've drawn out here basically how everything's supposed to attach to this side. Right here is the bottom piece that's going to go in and form the bottom, and when everything basically, the screws will be to the outside, especially here and along the top at the top and the back. These stretchers that go in here in between the drawers the screws will be on the bottom. But the bottom goes here, and there's going to be a stretcher across the back here. This is part this and the one at the top up here. These go in basically to help provide stability in the back and squareness, but also so that you can anchor into your wall through this point here and this point up here. Now, if you notice right here, there's a stretcher on the top, but there's a 1/4 inch gap here. And that's because there's going to be a groove here that runs right along here down. It's going to go all the way through the cabinet. But what's going to happen is the back's going to slide in here, and it's going to slide all the way down to the bottom here. And then, they'll be supported on the back here, and then there'll be grooves on either side of the cabinet, which will hold that panel. Now, on the top, there's a stretcher on the top. This was a 1/4 inch from the back stretcher, and that allows the gap for the back panel. Then we also have the front top stretcher as well. Now, on the front of this, I went to lay this out for drawer cabinets, and you see this little box here with the X in it. This just merely represents the face frame on the front, how far that's going to come down. I put that in there so that I would have, once my drawer fronts are in, because all my drawer fronts are going to set inside the frame. I put this in here so that basically I could use this as a reference point off of my face frame, so I could get my spacing for in between my drawers. Now, I've made, you can see where I made some changes throughout here, but these wide points here, these are basically where all the drawer slides are going to go. And I'll grab this drawer slide and show you real quick how these go in here. But this is going to be for my bottom drawer. Then this will be for the next drawer up, and subsequently the next drawer up. And the final one goes in this location right here. Now, these will be put in, I'm going to be cutting spacers so that I can put all these in the cabinet while they lay on their side once I get them assembled. That way I can put the spacers in, starting from the bottom, and put my first one in, and then put the next size spacer in, and get them so that these all get put where they're supposed to be. Once I get these all in, then I'll be able to measure and get an exact measurement on my cut all my drawers out. But you can see where all these lay here. And when these screw in, once I disassemble these, I'll be screwing into these center lines. And if you if you was paying attention, the next set of marks that we have is right here, here, and here. And basically, that's where my stretchers are going to go. And basically, my stretcher is going to set in here like this. Let me grab another piece too, just so you, okay. Keep in mind that this here is the drawer base. And this is the stretcher. So the stretcher is going to go here like the here, here, and here. Then of course you have this top stretcher here. Get back up there. Now, these stretchers will go in like this. Now, originally, I had figured I figured, well, I'll have 3 drawers. But I started laying this out, and I do need the bigger ones on the bottom, and this next size up will be the next size drawer. Those are for stuff that, like, hand saws, tools I don't use so much, hardware and stuff like that. But when I got toward the top, I got thinking that since I'm using 1/2-inch bottoms in my drawers, I'm going to have about 3 inches inside those top drawer. And that's good for like bits and pieces and parts and small things. But I decided instead of trying to just get one bigger drawer, I would make 2 smaller drawers like that. That gives me a little bit more versatility as far as more places I can put bits and pieces closer to the top, so I'm not having to bend over as much, and use these bottom deeper drawers for stuff like saws and drills and routers and things like that I want put away, but I don't want them stuck in a back shelf or on a top shelf someplace where they disappear. So this will be the way that it lays out. Now in the process of that, I soon realized that because I'm putting an extra drawer in here than I originally figured, I ended up having to cut 3 more of these and get those done. And if you noticed, I've already got the pocket holes in. All the pocket holes are done for the cabinets. Now I figured it up. I think I had over 112 pocket holes that I did for all the stretchers and the bottoms and everything. And I think I figured out that when I get to the drawers, that there's going to be 12 drawers, and in those 12 drawers, there's going to be about 144 pocket holes. So I got to do so. Pocket holes, there's a lot of them here, but that's a lot of screws as well. But I just, that's the way the layout's going to be. Today, what we're going to be doing over at saw, and I'll show up the setup on that, is I'm going to be setting this so that we can cut this groove here in all 8 of the sides, and then we can go ahead. I have the backs cut out to rough size, and then we'll get those to a final size, and then we'll start assembling all these cabinets. All right, now I'm going to be setting up to do the grooves in the side panels so that the back panel will go in, and this is the way we're going to do it. So we got to bring the fence over a little bit. Now, I'm not using a dado blade, so I have to do this in a couple steps. Now, this piece of scrap here, this represents the width of the back stretchers, and basically the panel is going to slide down it's going to slide in a groove right in front of the stretcher like this. So I have to make the groove so that it will basically, so what this piece right here represents, this here represents the front of the groove. So by laying thickness of the stretcher, and this is the thickness of the back panel, what I can do is I can bring it in here and bring it to the front side of this blade. And if I'm real careful, I can get my depth right there. Now I want to get as close as I possibly can, and kind of shooting down through like that. And I'll lock that in. So it looks like that's about right. So just to double check the back, I'm putting that back there, And again, I'm gonna use this piece, and I can see that it's just a little right there like that. That needs to be adjusted just a little bit, because that's going to give a nice wide, and that right there, that right there, it looks like that will be in there. All right. It takes a little finagling to get this, because the thing is simply by right there. That should do it. That should give us a nice cut. And if I check the front, I heard the guy talking, and I was like, it's a backflow part.
I didn't hear him talking. He's probably talking to somebody on the phone.
He was. That's what got my attention. All right. So, sorry for the, all right, so, and I'm sighting down that blade so I can get the right on there, and that looks good there. And that also looks good on right there. So, with that setting, basically this saw curve's gonna take basically the front side of the curve. And when I make the second cut, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen this up, and I'm gonna slide this fence over using this as a spacer for the back, and that'll give me the back side of the groove. And that should give us the grooves on everything. But before I go too far, once I do, I'm gonna do a test piece. Well, I'm gonna do all the grooves, and then before I have a test piece that I use. So, but the next thing I gotta do is I gotta get my blade height right, because I don't want this thing to be too deep. I don't want that. That arbor definitely needs to be oiled. I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit more. All right, this should be a nice. What happened? These mics I used got a magnet on when I leaned over. It was like the magnet got caught on the bed, so that's what that was all about. Okay, so we have that taken care of. We have our height. Just double check that. Yeah, I can feel the top of that blade. And then we have our first cut, which is there, plus that. It's good in the front, nothing moved, and good in the back. So that'll be good there. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to run all my backs through. Now on these backs, I'll show you, I'll get one of the backs and bring it up here. Now, all right. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if you're building a cabinet that has a toe kick in the front, you have to be careful. You have to be careful which, that, because once you have a toe kick in there, then basically you have what's a left and right slide, and you have to be careful how you run these through, so that the grooves, the groove, when you put the grooves in, you have a piece that has a groove on this side, and you have a groove that has you have a piece that has a groove on this side. That's if you have two. Okay. With doing it box style like this, all you got to do is keep just put your grooves on one side, and you can flip, because these Macs, they're like 30 inches tall and 21 is 3/8 wide, or 3/4 wide. And you can have the groove here, and for the other side, basically you're just flipping it like this, because there's no pocket holes in here to deal with. There's no toe kick that you have to deal with. All the pocket holes are in the bottoms and the stretchers, and that frees you up. That way you don't have to worry about it. But if you had toe kicks on this, or you just put pocket screws, you'd have to pay attention to that. So we're going to go ahead and start cutting all these out, and I'll be I'll be back in a little bit. If you saw me flip this one over, I merely flipped this one over because I did all my layout here and I wanted to see, keep it right. But the rest of them I'm not going to worry about. The only time I'm checking anything is I'm just looking what's the best side. On the drawer cabinets, it's going to have drawers in it. You're not really going to be able to see the inside. But on the whichever one I use for the one on the end for all my sleds, you will be able to see the inside. So I'm just trying to get the best grain to be to the inside of the cabinet. It's just a little extra. It doesn't really matter at this point. Now that's the first cut on all my sides. Now I'm gonna do the same cut on a piece I'm gonna use to test the back when I do the setting for the second cut. All right, now that gives me the groove so I know the inside of the cabinet. So I'm gonna shut this off and we're gonna reset this. All right, now it's stopped. Now we're going to set that in there like that, unlock it, and then we're just going to use the micro adjust to take it in. And I don't want to be pushing that blade over. I just barely, because of the micro adjust, it gives me leverage. There we go. All right. And I can slide that through and just barely touches the blade. So I'm gonna do my cut on this piece, and then I'm gonna test it and make sure everything fits right. And that is exactly what I want right there. It's not too tight, but it's not too loose either. And that gives me a nice tight fit, you know, but enough room where I can slide this in without having to bang it in with a hammer. All right, so with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and cut all these other pieces out. Okay, that looks to be good, but I'm going to get that piece and try it one more time. And that right there is what I'm looking for, right there. Good. So I'll set that back there. I'm gonna go ahead and get these other 7 pieces done. And I've stacked these all up, but I'm double checking just to make sure before I cut it, because you know, once you cut a piece of wood, it's hard to put it back together. And I just checked to make sure the last one I did is just as good as the first one I did, and it is. And it's not leaning over, it's sticking right where it's supposed to real good. And just as the caveat of that, yesterday when I was finishing up, I was probably had about a third of my stringers left, and the jig I was using that had been, set the right position, it slipped. And I noticed something was different before I finished that cut. So I went back and looked at it, and it slid out of point. So every once in a while you want to check these things. You don't want to get halfway through it and not realize it. Then you've done a bunch of cuts or drew a bunch of holes that you can't use, and they're going to waste material. So, and waste time, because it takes time to do pocket holes and things like that. You don't want to have to be doing them more than once. So in the next part of the video, we'll be putting some of these cabinets together. Hello and welcome back. All right, as you can see here, I've already got one of my 3 drawer cabinets assembled and sitting on here. So, and this is the way it's going to look. It's all screwed together. It's ready to go. The only thing I have left to do is put the drawer slides in here, and I'll show that at the last part of the film. But for right now, I'm going to show you how I built one of these, so just follow along. Now I'm going to build the carcass and get it all together, and then these pieces right here, these are my shims, so to speak, or my spacers, to put the three different cross members in there, dividers for the drawers, and I use these as well. I'll get to that once I get the box assembled. Okay, that's all my dividers. All right. Gotta shake the dust out of there. Not a bad idea to take the dust off of here. Okay. Now I'm turned this way because I need to get this first piece done and get it on there. I need to basically clamp from here down, but I also want to clamp up underneath the edge of this table as well. And this is the only edge that has a place where I can do that. So. And the main reason why we're using clamps here is because pocket holes, well, they are a great and wonderful thing, especially for this type of work. They have a bad habit of walking off if you don't have them clamped down. If you bought any jigs or anything, or done any like Craig stuff, you'll realize that, you know, you go through, they'll have they have like one where it goes down inside the hole and then you can clamp it underneath and to hold it. But I mean, that I've had one of those at one time and they work relatively well. But for stuff like this, the best thing is just, if you can, clamp it down. It just seems to work best. And ideally, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to clamp this in between two of the holes while, you know, getting this thing clamped down nice and tight and straight and flush to both sides here and flush on both these sides. And it seems to be doing the trick right now. So just gonna get one extra quarter turn and that should do it. And the thing on pocket screws is very important to use a drill that has and use like this one here. This one here has different, you know, tensions, and 12 works real good for this. But you know, you don't want one that doesn't have one, because then you're playing by ear. And I have in the past, I've screwed these so much to actually pull through and split the wood. So you need them snug, but you don't want to be pulling through the wood either. So but with that, you hear it click, it's good. It's not going to go any deeper. You're not going to damage the wood. Do one on each end, do the one in the center, and then I'll do the one in between those. When doing something like this, I would recommend you do at least 5, like an inch and a half in from the end on either end. One in the center, and we'll divide that last remainder by half, and that should give you all the pocket screws that you need for a joint like this. And of course, now this next one we're going to do, we're going to turn this one on the side. So I'm just going to take this one off, give it right there for the time being. Well, it's not exactly the best way of doing it, but so I'll just set it up there. Part of the problem is I have a little bit limited on my space, so we're having to do this the funky way. Okay, so I'm going to want to put at least one of these for a spacer to keep the end when I put it in there, not to do this. One thing to keep in mind when doing this, when I put the groove in earlier, I said it didn't matter which side, and it doesn't for when you don't have a toe kick incorporated inside. But one thing you have to pay attention to is when you're putting this together, which way the lines are. You know, I've done it before where you're not paying attention and you have a groove on either and you have to unscrew it and start, go back and redo it. But you need those grooves to be on the same side. Now, ideally, that will sit there like that. And the easiest thing to do is just use the table. Crank on that. That should be good. 4 screws. That's one. And there's the other one. So now the next thing we got to take care of, we're going to take care of this brace right here, but I've got a piece of plywood that we need to put down, and we've got to make sure that it's like on this one, for whatever reason. Oh, I see the reason. This back was up. That's the exact reason why it's up, and that's something to keep an eye on. So I'm just going to back that one off just a little bit, and I should be able to take this brace totally off. Now, you can see that here everything's flush, and it would be over here had I paid attention. Now, I'm going to try this. Odds are it's going to go back in the hole and retrace the same routes, but we'll see if this does anything. We'll tighten that one up. And well, it for most part it did what I intended it to do this time around. But just to be on the safe side, since this one's the way it's supposed to be, and this one it slid down again. So it did what I anticipated doing. So to make sure that this one goes in properly, I'm sliding it in this groove here. This one's where it needs to be, so that won't be a problem. So the next thing to do is we're going to put this one in, and this one basically goes right down on top of that, and it kind of holds that back piece in. Plus, it gives a place to screw the top to, which we'll get to that later on. Okay, so that's sitting the way it's supposed to. In cabinet making, there is a little bit of lee room for forgiveness if you know what you're looking for. Some things you can get away with. Other things, you can't. So you just gotta it's a little bit of trial and error and finding out what you can and can't get away with. Things that, you know, if you can live with it, it's not going to make that big deal. You'll be able to work around it and have a really nice set of cabinets when you're done. You know, that's only about 1/16 of an inch that it's off, but if you're not paying attention, it could be a problem. That's the reason why you got to pay attention every step of the way. Watch things. Don't get in a hurry. It's my experience. You get in a hurry or you start getting tired, then you start making a lot of mistakes. And some mistakes you can live with. Other ones end up costing you money in the long run. So, little advice for someone who's been around a while. And this applies in every aspect of work. You know, you get frustrated, you get tired, and you know. Some days it's just better to go home or quit early if you can. But when you're doing stuff for yourself, you're doing it. Take your time, make sure everything fits right, because when you start putting things together like this and you haven't paid attention to some of the crucial details, it can really make some cost you and really frustrate you. All right, now the next ones, you still should be able to see these because I don't have the back slid in, so you should be able to see these, but I'm gonna have to flip this to get the rest of these in. All right, I'm gonna be doing this one here next, and then what I'll do is I'll put my spacers in, and we'll start working on the bottom and get the centers in. Okay, nice and tight. All right, and let's make sure you guys can see this. This first one, well, you may be able to see it. Okay. So, for these next three, it's going to be a combination of these three sets of jigs and basically this. Now what this is the material that I'm using for my drawer fronts and my face frames. It's thicker than this 3/4 inch stock. It's not a full inch, but it is thicker than this. So I'm using this as a spacer because I'm just using it so that I can keep the spacers back a little bit, and I put my face frames on, and then my drawers will sit in there. I don't want to have one of those issues where I have a face frame, a piece of wood is, this is never quite the same. But I don't want those issues where I just set everything flush, and then I have an issue with, something being thicker when I get my drawers set in, it doesn't fit. So take care of that problem. I'm just simply spacing everything back that distance. All right, we'll see as we go. You'll see how these things go. All right, my first set of spacers from the bottom is these. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm setting these spacers in, and you'll see how this works. Now, bam, it's in there. It's pushed all the way down, there and there. Double check. Yep, just like that one. And I'm spaced up off the back. So again, we're going to do 4 screws, and then we're going to add to it. So I'm gonna pull these forward a little bit. The next set of spacers is the next size, and this is in my next deepest drawer. And I'm just leaving those in there until I get all the spacers in, then I'll take them out. Again, I'm gonna slide this one forward a little bit because it's, there we go. Alrighty then. So that one's spaced in, again, 4 screws. And what I'm doing is I'm grabbing this because sometimes when these screws go in, they want to kick a board out. So I'm just, because of rotation of the screw. So I'm just making sure everything's where it's supposed to be. Now, as you see, some of these spacers, they can be a little snug in there, but they will come out. May take a little persuasion. But these will all be the same. And I said I put a square on this thing, so I will throw a square on it. All right, pretty good. So, needs to go a little bit, but it's pretty, there it is, right there. Okay, so the final piece to put in here is the back. I'm gonna show that to you. All right, here we go, we're gonna do this again. As you can see, this is a nice snug fit, but I don't have to take a hammer and beat it and get it in there. And we'll right there. Now, and that's all it takes is to slide it in. What will happen is when I attach this at some point here, I'll drill through both of these into the stud and that'll lock the back in.